well. And today, Callie and I are here to tell Callie's adoption story. So I thought you guys might really enjoy just seeing her and listening to kind of her perspective of her story. Um, so, two words that I associate with Callie's story is one is timing and two is provision, because her story was the most dramatic story of all of the adoption stories. So, but she's not dramatic at all. So I don't know why. We had all the drama before you got here, I guess. So, okay. So if you remember, we had adopted two other times. We adopted Johanna Grace from China in 2005. She was 18 months old when we adopted her, and now she is almost 17 in a couple of weeks. But then in 2008, we adopted a sibling set of three from Ethiopia. And at that time, when we adopted them, they were the ages of 2.5, 6, and 9, almost 10. And now they are 15, 19, and 22. So that's pretty crazy. So at the beginning of Callie's story, we were not really looking to adopt again, but I was on different websites, just looking at the children, praying over the children that were there, just, praying that God would bring them forever families. And I gotten that idea from another adoptive mom friend of mine. And so when I was doing that, though, I started seeing these older kids that I didn't think really had a chance at adoption. And so that kind of broke my heart. And two kids that I saw on there, one was a boy that was about 12 years old, and then one was a boy that was 5. And so we started talking, my husband and I started talking about, what would it be like if we tried to adopt those two boys? And so we started the process, and it was the most crazy, kind of bizarre adoption journey, because we really felt like God was wanting us to adopt these two boys, ages 12 and 5. But it didn't seem like we could. And I'll explain that a little bit. But it was just strange. We had our caseworker, who was great, our social worker, she was fantastic. But the person above her was just really concerned about us adopting an older boy that was about the same age at that time as David, our oldest adopted son. And so she was just really concerned about that, and, just what that would do to David. And we'd be, messing up the birth order. So she was just really not very happy about that. So we read lots of books and that sort of thing. And finally, it came to the place where she wanted us to do just some psychological evaluations of some of our kids. And we did not feel comfortable doing that. One, because they did not even understand English very well at that time, because they'd only been here for about a year, a little bit more than a year. So we really did not feel comfortable with that, especially going to somebody that a psychologist that we did not know. The other thing was, it was really hard to find a psychologist, one that was used to dealing with adopted kids. So we just said, okay, that's a no-go for us. So if we drop the older boy, can we still adopt the younger boy? And she said, well, then you would be doing non-biological twinning, which we had never even talked about non-biological twinning. And if you don't know, non-biological twinning is basically where you have a little baby, and then usually what happens is it's a baby that you've adopted, and then you get pregnant during the process of adopting. And so you have an adopted baby that's a couple months older than your biological baby. And, it really has to do with when they're babies. Like, can you give them enough care? It's just a hard thing to do. So that's what non-biological twinning was. And we're like, but that doesn't apply to us because our kids are older than that. They are, 4 at that time. I think they were 4 and 5. And so she was still really stuck on this, and we went round and round. there were some other things, just, normal things that were going on in our home because we already had 8 kids. It was very busy. We had, there was just a lot going on. There was from ages 4 to ages 17. And so, in the back of our minds, we're like, are we crazy? Like, what are we doing? And so we really did seek a lot of counsel from other adoptive parents that were our good friends that knew our family dynamic. And we also asked like some counselors that we knew that were familiar with adoptive issues. And so finally, it came to the point where we just had to decide what in the world we were doing. And so I, asked my husband one night as we were driving home from actually talking to an adoptive counselor, saying, what are we going to do? Like, I just need you to make the decision. And so he said, well, we're not going to do it. And I'm like, but that's not the right decision. So I was very mature about it, and very godly about it. And, all that, or just that I can't accept that decision because I just don't feel like it's the right decision. So during all of these months, and this was, months long, we were reading books and we were just trying to figure out what God wanted us to do. We got all of our paperwork together. We had the whole dossier done. And, but we were not convinced that we should go through with it. So when it came time to go to the bank and we were going to borrow some money against our house to pay for the adoption, we went to the bank, and the lady, because of a refinancing deal, she looked at us and said, well, you can't take any money out of your house. And we're like, well, what? And so she said, no, you can't do that because this is you did a different type of loan. And so now that money is not available to you at this time. And so we just came out of there like shell shocked, like, what in the world? Like, and so finally we're just like, well, I guess that's God's answer because we literally cannot adopt because we do not have the money to do that. And so, and also Phil had changed jobs at that time. So, in our previous adoptions, his company had really helped us out a whole lot with the financing and with helping us adopt. But now we did not have that because we were at a different company and we literally had no money. So we're like, okay, well, we just can't do it. So I put the whole dossier in my desk drawer, and every weekend I would say, did you write the adoption agency and tell them that we're not going to adopt? And Phil was like, oh, okay, I'll do that Monday. And like Dad is like, if you give him a list of stuff to do, he does it like right away, right? Like he can't, rest until all of the, everything's checked off. So it was really strange that we never wrote the adoption agency and told them that we couldn't adopt. So fast forward about 6 weeks, and I was at the gym. I got a phone call, and it was a Virginia number, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. That's our adoption agency. And so I was getting into my car from the gym, and I said, hey, and they were like, hey, we have good news for you guys. We have this sweet little girl over here. She's 4 years old, and we kind of have a special situation with her, and we want to know if you guys would be interested in adopting her. And I'm like, well, let me go home and talk to Phil because we had never told them that we were not going to adopt. And so I went home and I said, you are not going to believe this, but the adoption agency just called and they have a little girl for us. She's 4 years old, and there's some special circumstances surrounding her adoption, and they want to know if we're interested. And he was like, well, it hasn't changed that we don't have any money, but let's talk to them about it. And so we did. We called them back, and so kind of what had happened, and I don't know, Callie, if you have any recollection of this at all, but what had happened is she had actually been adopted by another family, in Ethiopia, or not Ethiopian family, but another American family. Long story short, it was taking a super long time for them to get the paperwork that they needed. And Callie's health wasn't the greatest at the time. And so she was, kind of sick at that time. And so, I mean, this was weeks and weeks that went by. And finally, the man, for whatever reason, we don't know why, and it's okay, because she's ours. So, but the man decided that he couldn't continue, and so they basically brought her back to the orphanage, and so that they could not continue the adoption, but to finalize the adoption. So what happens is, though, that she was still adopted in their name according to the courts. So the adoption agency went back to the judge and said, we have a special circumstance, and if you revoke this adoption, we promise you that we will get her adopted quickly. And the lady judge said yes.
Yeah, emotional rain.
Yep. So that was a special circumstance. And so when we talked to the adoption agency, later that day, they said, here, they told us the story, and they said, we really have to get this moving quickly. Where are you in the adoption process in your dossier? And I said, well, honestly, it's all finished. It's done. It's in my desk. And they were like, that's great. Send it to us. If we get it, tomorrow morning, then we'll forward it to Ethiopia. And so we said, we just need a couple of days to pray about this, but we'll go ahead and send you some of our paperwork. So we prayed. They said, well, pray, but pray quick. So we did. And, God he just gave us peace that this was really what was supposed to happen. And so, like 2 days later, we called them back and we said yes. And we had they helped us out actually with some of the finances. And then we had another organization's Pathways for Little Feet, actually helped us out. Also, and the ABBA Fund actually helped us out too. So, I mean, we just started pulling resources and a little bit here and there. But it was going so quickly that we had to get there in 2 weeks. As soon as she was approved, or as soon as we were approved to adopt her, we had to be there in 2 weeks because the courts were getting ready to close for a month or so in the fall. And so we were like, okay. So we had to get our airplane tickets, and the only way we could get there in time to go to court with her was to go first class on Ethiopian Air. And I will say first class on Ethiopian Air is not the same as first class on other airlines. So we're still thankful for it, but it's not quite what you think, except for the price. So those were the only 2 tickets they had. We had to have them. And so we started just praying about it. People were asking us about it. And we ended up having a big car wash at Chick-fil-A. And
You want to go through this one? I know
Sure.
some of it.
Okay.
They did have a car wash. They had, I believe, a garage sale. Yeah, I think they sold some things. And the sacrifice of my sister's toys.
But she's never let you forget.
Nope, she'll never let me forget. And as they had the car wash, as the story I was told, is a car came up and said, "Who is this girl that you're trying to adopt?" And they saw the signs that they had about Callie's adoption, and they really did pull a lot of money towards the adoption, is what I heard. I don't know how much, but I do know that it helped them a significant amount. Yeah. And in the week or 2, they got the money that they needed to adopt me. So yeah, that's what I was told. Yeah.
Okay. So that's true. And we had people coming up from our church, handing us some pretty big bills saying, "Here, wash my car while I go get something to eat," and so it was just amazing. were able to buy our plane tickets and we went over there. And of course, it was pretty traumatic for Callie to have been with, another set of parents and then not go home with them. So when we got there, she was just, I think, very confused, probably, and very scared, and just like this is gonna be like last time. And so she did not trust us very much for that week. But one of the very cool things is, if you remember, I said that at the very beginning we were thinking about adopting a 12-year-old boy. Well, that boy happened to be Callie's older brother, which we did not know until, we started adopting Callie. And so he was being adopted by another family. And that was, again, just God's provision, because when we said, that we're not going to be able to adopt the older boy, just probably a couple weeks later, we had heard that he had been officially matched with another family. And so that was just a super sweet thing from God, that he's like, you know what, I've got this under control. Just keep walking faithfully and just trust me. So that was really neat. And we got to meet him, and he knew English. So that was really great. So he was able to talk to us and also talk to Callie. And that was just a really, really sweet provision from God for us. We also got to meet Callie's mom, who was very sweet, and that was just a really great thing too. And she also got to explain to Callie, what was going on. And so I think that really helped. So we spent the week there. We went to court. We went and met with the judge and promised that we would, continue the adoption and bring her home. So we came home without her because at that time they made it a 2-trip deal, because of actually the things that happened to Callie the first time around happening more than just to her. It happened to several other children too. And so the government changed the policy. So the first trip, we went with her to meet with the judge, and then we had to come home and wait for all the paperwork to go through so that we could go back and adopt her officially and get her visa and that sort of thing. So anyways, we did the best we could and explained to her that, we are leaving, but we are coming back. And so when we got home, we were just, really like, how are we going to get her home? And we don't want her to be scared and nervous. And so we were trying to figure out different options for that, so that she would be feel safe and comfortable. So, and also we had to raise money for the last part of the adoption process. And the garage sale that Callie was talking about is what we did at that time. Because and everybody from our church just brought everything. Like, they were emptying out storage places and bringing them to our house. Our garage was packed. Our dining room here was packed. Our entryway was packed. And it was just so great. It was really, really sweet thing. So we raised enough money to go back again. And the second time that we went back, actually, my husband and my daughter went. Because of Callie's relationship with her older brother, we thought, well, it might be easier and less threatening if our daughter, who was 12 at the time, if she went, and then, it would be more of a playmate, that sort of thing. And so she did. Michaela went with Phil to go get Callie. And I mean, there were some rough spots in there. Do you remember any part of that?
I just remember her trying to bribe me to like her.
Yeah.
Give me bubbles inside the building.
She was a hard sell. Mm-hmm. She was waiting for the good stuff. Well, I guess one time they were walking down the street, and you saw, what was it, a bracelet or a ball or something? I think maybe it was a bracelet. And you pointed to it, and so Dad bought you that bracelet. And so, yeah, you were a hard sell. She didn't give her love and smiles very freely at the very beginning. So, but we, it was great that Michaela got to go. They brought her home, and we we're all waiting and everything. And I just, I just remember that when she got here, we all went to the airport. We put her in a car seat because she was 4, and she was like, "What are you doing?" And she was like screaming. And we had David, our 12-year-old, also at the time, he's Ethiopian, ride with her, hoping that that would calm her down, and that she would see kind of a familiar face. And yeah, so we got her home, and we had just some toys and stuff like that out. And I remember it was so funny because the girls had their Barbies out in the living room, and Callie was very interested in that, so she went and sat down. And everybody, I mean, like, even my teenage sons, older sons, everybody sat down on the floor and started playing Barbies. And and that's when we got some smiles. And she I think you just relaxed at that time because you were here. It was done. And it was like, okay, I'm here. So what she thought might not be possible happened. And she started warming up to everybody ever since then. And yeah, so those are why the 2 words provision. And that was just amazing. It was an amazing story of just God providing and using our friends and our church family to provide. And also timing, because we worked so hard to be able to adopt at the very beginning of that whole process. But then when God said, "No, this is the girl for you at this time, and you need to go in 2 weeks," his timing was right, and we did. So yeah, it was just truly a God story. And we are just so blessed and thankful that Callie is part of our family. She is the peacemaker, the counselor. Everybody ends up in Callie's room at night to talk things over.
Not always.
But she also speaks truth. She's not a pushover, right? So so anyway, she's just a joy and a blessing. It's been fun to keep up with her brother that is in the States also. She also has 2 younger sisters, or actually a younger sister and an older sister here in the States. And we have been able to see them, and and they communicate. So that's really cool to keep that family bond going, which is so important. And so God's blessing all over that. Yeah. And so that is our second Ethiopian adoption, 3rd overall adoption. And we just have one more left to tell you, which is our last one, our Chinese.
Is it really the last one?
It's really the last one. So until we're getting too old. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you're part of our church family, thank you.
She says thank you. Thank you all for supporting me in my adoption. I'm sure that was a blessing to all of us. Even though I wasn't remembering any of that, every time I hear it, it's a very big blessing that I heard that, and what you guys did. And it's something that I don't think would have been possible without God. And I really, truly am blessed to have this family. And yeah, I can let you.
Thank you guys so much.